this meeting is for us to um, see how see the human side in what artificial intelligence and everything, right? Okay, give me 7 minutes. All right, so like I said, we're looking at the human side of what things and how to go right. So here are the objectives we'll be looking at today. So by the end of this lesson, I'm hoping that we'll be able to understand AI principles, right? Understand what fairness is, accountability, transparency, privacy as it concerns AI systems, right? Now, I learn would get to know what is bias. What does it mean? What is it something an AI model is biased? Uh, Three, understand why machine learning systems require security measures, special security measures beyond traditional cyber security, right? Then recognize vulnerabilities in machine learning models and the risk associated with them. Okay? And then also see strategy biases. All right, so moving on. These are the outlines of topics we'll be looking at. Uh, AI and AI bias and ethics, importance of security in machine learning systems, right? Risk and vulnerabilities of vulnerabilities in machine learning, sorry, and best practices for securing machine learning. So these are things we're going to be looking at today. Now, what is AI bias? So by default, a bias is like I'm trying to give a very simple definition. So bias is like something that stems from personal um, preferences or prejudices. Okay, so it is not the standard way of doing things, but it comes up as a result of what's it called, your own personal uh, what's the word I was using? I don't use expressions. Personal okay. I'm trying to look for the word, but I'm not getting that word. I'll come back to it. So let me just do the definition I have here. So AI bias occurs when an AI system reflects unfair or prejudiced outcomes due to biased data or flawed data algorithms. So it's basically this, right? Um, Machines can only learn from the data that they have, and if this data is biased, incomplete or of poor quality, the output of the machine will reflect the same problems. So how do I give you this in simple terms now? Now let's say, for instances, now we okay, let me use instances of, let's say, at home. While growing up, um, our parents had a disposition, a liking for last bonds. Okay, we say mommy likes the last born in the house more than the first bond or more than the second bond. And then you grew up with that mentality, right? So that is creating a bias. So by the time you grow and you give birth, if that mentality is not corrected, you tend to see it playing in your own family, whereby you tend to like your last born or your last child more than the first or second child. Now, what you're experiencing there is called a bias, right? Because it is something that has what been passed on. Same thing applies in an AI system, in machine learning systems. So if things are taken out or erroneously omitted or 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 hidden, right, and you train the machine learning model in that way, now you have created a bias, okay, because it is not the standard way of doing things. So that's what it means. So what it is going to do is that it's going to create a system, okay, that has the same problem. So you wouldn't be getting the standard things. Think of it as if you're creating let's say we're doing manufacturing, have a faulty material that was introduced into the what example I use now? Okay, let's say Coke. Why is it Coke? The ingredients for Coke, let's say it was diluted, or they used a substandard material. Everything that they're going to use in that production line, everything they're going to produce in that batch is going to be substandard, because they're using a substandard material product. That's what a bias means in very simple terms. So now, what are sources of bias? How can we experience bias in an AI system? So historical data reflecting human prejudices. So you have situations whereby somebody, take for instance, somebody um, writes an article about a person and omits certain details, or says things that are very bad or not proper, and then you take that article as your source of data, and you train a system. You are creating a system of bias already. So let me paint it in very simple terms. For, let's say, if you grew up in the average Nigerian home, and then say for instance you stayed in a public compound, right? So there's a tendency that your mom and dad must have gotten into issues or had a fight with a neighbor at one point or the other. A bias, how bias will be introduced there is where you see parents telling their kids, I don't want you to greet XYZ person, or I don't want you to play with the children. And then those children will grow up with that same mindset. Then you hear things like, my mommy said I should not play with you, or my mommy said I should not greet this. Those are instances of what bias, right? It has been passed down. Now, another thing that could give us a source of bias would be imbalanced training data. Okay, so whereby you're using too much data to train a model, that could give bias, and these data are not properly formatted. It could give us biases. It could serve as a source of bias. Now we have biased feature selection or labeling. I'm going to explain this as we move along, right? So examples of bias in AI: we have algorithm bias. I don't know if you've come across, say for instance, certain AI models, your generative models. uh I think it was prevalent in the early years, I think last year or last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, whereby if you wanted to generate, say for me joining now, if you wanted to generate pictures of an African child, right, it was going to be giving you, it had minimal pictures to depict African children. You see things it will either give you a black American, or it will give you an American, or it will give you something totally off. Now, that's an algorithm bias, and it's as a result of the fact that the data they were trained on, right, at that very point in time, didn't have enough coverage for the use it was needed for. So you didn't have enough coverage for maybe African kids. Say for instance, if you trained your machine learning models with a million data sets, and out of that million data sets, you have about 800 that was channeled to, say, white, and then you had just about 200 that was channeled to maybe Africans and the others. So in that kind of data set, it's going to be very hard for you to get an accurate form of information, because the data set already that you are training it on is very biased. That's an instance of algorithm bias. Then we have sample bias. If the data set you select doesn't accurately represent the situation, your results will reflect this error. An example of this is you're collecting salary information, but you only record those of male employees. All right. So this is a bias, because if you're giving a report and saying the average person or the average human earns about 100,000, then you are asked, what is the source of your information? How did you get your data? And you now say you sampled the salaries of about 100 men or 100 working class men. Now that's a bias already, because it didn't factor into play women, right? It didn't factor the opposite gender into play. That's a bias on its own. So in this case, your data set is already biased, which will lead to a flawed system. Then we have prejudice bias. Now it's similar to sample bias, but prejudice bias uses data that is influenced by societal biases, incorporates this prejudice into what should be opinion-free data. So, for instance, now you are evaluating the gender distribution in certain occupations, but you only count female teachers and male doctors, creating an inaccurate skew in your data. So for let's say you're taking bias into considerations. Okay, let me use this way. Now, that we have in Africa, right? In jobs that are reserved for certain genders. For instance, you'd hardly find a female engineer, you'd hardly find a male nurse. All those things are prejudices, right? So if you now train your data set on those prejudices, right, you're already having a biased system. That is what this simply means in this kind of system, right? In this kind of so we have algorithm bias, we have sample bias, we have prejudice bias. Now, moving on, the next one we have is a measurement bias, which is the last one we're going to look at. We're going to be looking at in by examples of biases, right? Now, measurement bias occurs when data is incorrectly gathered, specifically on how it was measured or valued. For example, if employees are surveyed about feelings about the employers, right? If they're surveyed on their feelings about the employers, my apologies for that, and are promised a reward if enough employees answer, those who are motivated by the reward may not give thorough or accurate responses. We actually experience that even at in our place of work. Say, for instance, you have what's it called? You are given a target to probably learn something, and then at the end of it all, you are given a reward. There's a reward. Maybe there's a shopping voucher for you if you complete your course. But then deep down, you do not want to complete that course. But the fact that you have to get the shopping voucher already will just make you most likely will skim through and just skip and skip till you get to the end, and then you just submit that you what's it called, participated in that learning. This is an example of measurement bias, which already affects the system. I'm just giving us relatable experiences so we can know how to relate it in the systems we'll work on, right? So how do we mitigate bias in what AI? Now, addressing bias in AI requires a multifaceted approach, including diverse and representative data. We have to ensure that training data sets include a wide range of perspectives and them all there. I lost my data. Sorry, a second. Can you reconnect? Lost my data. Oh dear. Sorry.
No,
I'm sorry, I do apologize. My network dropped off. Sorry, I had to quickly reconnect. So back
okay,
to,
so thanks.
I'm sorry about that, really. I really do apologize. So going back to where we were. All right, so how do we mitigate bias in AI? Okay, so we need diverse and representative data. So if you are collecting data, if you're trying to train a model or train a system, right, you have to ensure that you have sufficient data sets that properly covers different perspectives and demographics. So if you want to do, it's just like, for instance, if you want to make sensors, you want to take sensors, it wouldn't make sense to take sensors of just um, men above 50, let's say men above 60, 65 years old, and men above 65 years old and women above 50, and then forget the demography that covers the teenagers, 18 to 20s, the young ones, people within their 40s and 50s, right? Now, if you are giving a report based on that, what you are doing is what? Bias, right? Because you didn't factor in the different demographics, right? It's just like when taking let's say you want to take examples of ethnic tribes, and then you focus on just Igbo, Yoruba, and Hausa. That already is a bias, right? Because we have tons of ethnic groups, right? So it wouldn't make sense focusing on the major demographics only. Although I need to point it out here. In data, there are times that certain demographics might not be sufficient for you to train your model on, right? So what you could do is to just group them, but as much as possible, you want to gather a lot of perspectives, different and diverse perspectives, as it helps you. Now, secondly, we look at bias detection tools. So we have to use things like fairness metrics, adversarial testing, and explainable AI techniques to identify and rectify bias. Now, there has to be continuous monitoring. You need to keep on monitoring and auditing your AI systems after deployment to detect emerging biases and improve fairness. Okay, over time, as you deploy models, it's just like in applications. If you build an application and launch it on Play Store, right? Now there's usually the beta version, and then there's subsequent upgrades. That's why each time, from time to time, you get the notification to upgrade your application, right? Because there's an improvement that has been made. The same thing too happens to our learning models, right? Our LLMs, our chatbots, and everything. If you started using ChatGPT when it came out newly, ChatGPT, Gemini, the rest of them, Grok, okay, Grok even came out recently, sorry. You notice that at some point, these systems were hallucinating. So what hallucinating means is, what hallucination means really is systems, means chatbots, machine learning models, right, giving wrong information. So these systems, they were hallucinating a lot because the data they were trained on, one, weren't sufficient, two, most of them were wrong, right? So over time, they had to be continuous and continue them improvement, which is even why up to now, systems, our learning models, how am I saying learning models? Our chatbots, ChatGPTs, ChatGPT, Midjourney, Gemini, every one of them, they are getting for and better as the day what emerges. Because now, as they keep on getting real-time data, they use that. The people behind the scene, right, the AI engineers and the rest behind the scene, use this data to improve the system, which is also something we're going to talk about as we proceed, where we have things about privacy and the rest, because it's one of the major things, one of the major ethical considerations that we have to look at over time. Then the fourth one is human oversight, keeping humans in the loop for critical decision-making areas where AI biases could have serious ethical or legal implications. What is ethics in AI? AI ethics refers to the principles and moral obligations guiding the development and deployment of AI technologies. Okay, so these are the principles and moral obligations that guide development and deployment of AI technologies. So these principles could be fairness, an AI system has to be fair, right? An AI technology has to be fair. It has to respect users' privacy, and so on and so forth. So these are the principles that guide these stuff. It involves establishing principles for the responsible development and use of artificial intelligence, ensuring it benefits society and aligns with human values. So if as engineers and would-be engineers, AI engineers, you want to ensure that when you're building AI technologies, it has to align with human values and it has to benefit society. Now, the same way people use AI for good, I think I discussed this in the previous webinar that we had, right? The same way people have good intentions for AI to use AI with, right? People also have crazy intentions too with AI technologies. People are building autonomous systems to do very, very nasty stuff, right? War machines. People are profiting a lot from creating crazy stuffs. Now it has always been like that from the start. So whenever there's a good thing, there's also the bad side of it. Right? People want to exploit the evil side of it. So you want to factor in what's it called now? Human values and benefiting society whenever you're building an AI solution. Now, the ethical principles of AI that we're going to be looking at is what fairness. Now there has to be equal treatment for all users. You have to ensure that when building an AI technology, it is open and easily accessible to everybody. Which is why you see in most models that you pay for, as much as you might pay for these solutions, these AI solutions, then there's still the room for premium. They still give you the basic plan. So for people that might not afford the premium plan, there's still like a basic plan, just to ensure that everybody has access to it. Everybody has access to it. That is what that is a principle that's always being factored in. Equal treatment for all users. Now, transparency, there has to be a clear understanding of how AI makes decisions. It has to be very clear when building your system. So if anybody asks you, how does your technology make decisions, your AI technology make decisions, it has to be a clear and laid out procedure. Right? You usually find this stuff in privacy documents once they start giving out those information. Now, accountability, clear assignment of responsibility for AI outcomes. There has to be accountability, privacy, respecting user data and consent. Although this issue of privacy is still one that is not has not been in my from one point of view, right? In one perspective, right, I really do not know. Probably we'll talk about it during the Q&A session. Right? But I feel like privacy is one of the parts where people still do not get are not still utilizing AI. They're not still adhering to rather, right? Because we have AI systems that still store your data, right? They store your data, and those data can be retrieved. We've heard reports of even your smart home systems, right? So your Google, your Siri, everything that you feel is private actually being stored, because that's how people actually retrieve information from you and use it to further enhance your usage. So I'm not really sure that there's 100% privacy, although in all respects there should be. Now, non-maleficence, all right? You have to ensure that your AI does not what cause harm. Those are part of the ethical considerations, principles to look at, right? Now, what are the ethical considerations? Privacy. How do we ensure that the data we are giving to the machine is both secure and private? Those are the distance we have to look at. We have to prioritize data privacy throughout the entire artificial intelligence life cycle. Now, this is one of the world's main concerns: how to privatize, how to make every data that is sent out private, right? Which is what I'm saying is still something that is still being struggled on. Now, the second ethical consideration is human dependence, right? Artificial intelligence is capable of automating some tasks that humans were previously handling, and it can also handle much more data than people can. That's for a fact. Your AI models, your AI technologies can handle data way, way faster than the average human can, right? However, it is absolutely essential that AI isn't left to make decisions on its own, right? As it will never replace human responsibility and accountability. Now, if data leaks, if this, let's think for instance, now if there's a data leak, right, we know the people to blame, the people that created this, what's it called, AIC solutions, right? If there's a data leak, right? But then in a case whereby your AI model or technology is 100% independent, it's going to cause a problem, because now there's no form of responsibility. It's just like if you watch Terminator, right, where all those where those the T I'm forgetting those Terminator models, right? They were given autonomy to make decisions on their own. Nobody could hold those machines responsible or accountable, right? Which is what we're trying as much as possible to avoid. So there has to be a certain level of human dependence, even from the artificial intelligence technologies. And there has to be sustainability. Advances in artificial intelligence and technology are supported, but as long as they don't come at the expenses of the environment and overall sustainability, these AI models, they are okay to use, provided they do not interfere negatively with the way of life and what affects our environment. Now, next up, we're looking at accessibility. New developments should be accessible worldwide and not just in highly developed countries with ease of access to technology. Now, to ensure that ethics in AI intelligence is prioritized, many countries, okay, I was saying, welcome back. To ensure that ethics in AI artificial intelligence is prioritized, many countries and global organizations have come together to come up with policies and regulations, such as the GDPR in European Union. Right. So these regulations are just to ensure that AI is being used in a safe way. Right. Now, it also ensures that organizations um, organizations will ensure that whatever technological advancement in AI will come from a place of commitment from every individual, company, and country across the world. So all the major tech companies, in fact, all companies that imbibing artificial intelligence into their systems, both the creators and the end users, ensure that there's what ethical considerations what in AI. Now, moving on, let's look at the importance of security in machine learning. Now, data security is a critical component of machine learning systems. Now, as ML models increasingly power applications across industries like healthcare, finance, and autonomous systems, they process vast amounts of sensitive data, right? Finance is like one good major part, right? Now, your bank accounts, your passwords, your pins, everything. Now, these are all data that they are using to train models. Right? They are all data. Everything we generate is data that can be used to train models. Now, ensuring the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of this data is essential to prevent breaches, safeguard privacy, and maintain trust in these technologies. Now, here are some reasons why data security is critical in ML and artificial intelligence. Data privacy is number one. Many machine learning models handle sensitive personal or financial information. Breaches can lead to identity theft, financial losses, violations of data protection laws such as GDPR or CCPA. Now, these are all data laws in place. The bottom line is if there's a breach in these models, personal data are what stored and stolen. In fact, it's general like that for organizations that handle data. We've heard of stories of, say, for instance, now our cryptocurrency space, right, whereby there was a data breach, and for millions of dollars worth of cryptos was what stolen, right, and they were not recovered. Now, this is as a result of data privacy, which is why machine learning models, AI engineers generally have a lot of work to ensure that these machine learning models are properly safeguarded. Now, integrity is the second one. Cyber attacks targeting the data pipeline can introduce malicious inputs or alter data sets, leading to inaccurate predictions or biased results. The next one, intellectual property protection. Proprietary data and models are valuable assets, sorry. Unauthorized access can result in intellectual property theft and competitive disadvantage. So, take for instance, now you're using a premium, let's say there's an AI tool used for generating ideas or generating images, and you're paying a premium for it, right? And you own the intellectual property. If there's a data breach and another person gets access to your unique assets, what it does is it creates a competitive disadvantage because that person now has access to what you have created and he will use it against you. A very common example is in the movie industry, right? We have people that would launch movies. Say, for instance, now a new movie comes out and you're supposed to see it. Say you're supposed to premiere in the cinema for about 3 months, right? And sell at a particular price. You now see people go to the cinema and then record that video as it's playing on the screen, right? And then upload it claiming to be what? The original. So you know very well, the average Nigerian would rather spend 1,000 naira to buy data and download a movie that is worth that is around 300, 400 MB, 500 MB, even if it's 1 gigabyte, right? Than pay 8 to 10,000 naira to go to the cinema and watch that same movie. So in that kind of thing now, there's intellectual property theft, right? There's infringement, copyright infringement. So these are also things that happen in machine learning models and technologies. So we have to ensure that we have stories of corporations that loses their data, or hackers find their ways into these corporations and then steal their data, holding them ransom. Now, another thing we're supposed to look at is what? Compliance. Organizations must adhere to industry-specific regulations that require robust data security measures to protect customer information and prevent misuse. These are the importances of security in machine learning. Now, let's look at what will happen. What are the challenges that one can face in securing machine learning models? Data. One of them is what? Data collection and storage. Machine learning systems often aggregate data from multiple sources, making it difficult to ensure consistent security measures across all data sets. So what this basically means is it's very hard for you to completely secure all the data that comes in. Reason being that these data are coming from different sources, right? These data are coming from different sources, user histories, customer behaviors, and so on and so forth. So it's usually very hard to completely protect the end-to-end flow of this data, which can lead to data leakage, right? Number two is data sharing. Collaborations and partnerships often require sharing data sets between organizations, increasing the risk of unauthorized access or misuse. So, for instance, an instance is Spotify sharing your user history with Netflix, right? Because these corporations, they share data, right? So, if Spotify is sharing your data with Netflix, it could also share your payment history, your payment details, and so on and so forth. So if there's a mishap, if there's a breach in between those data communications, your user data can actually be stolen, which can pose a significant threat and challenge to data security. Number three is adversarial attacks. Now, attackers can manipulate input data to deceive models, leading to incorrect predictions or system failures. Now, this one is actually very, 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 very key. So, for instance, now there's a way to say, for instance, I'm using ChatGPT, right? I'm using ChatGPT let's not use ChatGPT now. I'm using an AI model. So there's a group of us using an AI model right now, and then I prompt something. I generate a prompt, right, and it gives you an information. And there's a way to reverse engineer it that I can get the details of the person that prompted it. I could get the login details. I could get the phone location. I could get so on and so forth. So these are part of adversarial attacks, right? Right, that could lead to data security challenges. And then we also have model extraction. Okay, it's even what I was even saying. Attackers can reverse engineer models to extract sensitive information about the data they were trained on, posing a risk of privacy. So imagine Netflix using your own data to train okay, let's say ChatGPT now, but they all have a data warehouse, right? So they're getting data from Netflix, and then they're training their AI models on it, right? And then an AI hacker, right, can then reverse engineer those models and then extract those sensitive information so they can get access to your pins for payment and all those stuff, and then launch attacks. So these are some of the data security challenges that we have in machine learning. Other things we're looking at, Another thing we're looking at is what the strategy for securing machine learning models. Sorry, I'm being a bit fast so that we can have about 10 minutes to ask questions if there are any questions. So to address these challenges, how many slides do I have left? Okay. To address these challenges, organizations must adopt a multi-layered approach to data security in ML systems. Even yeah, every organization actually adopts multi-layered form of approach in data security. The basic one we can even see, for instance, now in our phones, there's these two-factor authentication, right? These are all multi-layers of data security. Then you can use data just to ensure that our data is what encrypted and stored. So one of the ways you can try this is what by encrypting your data, right? I know very well for cryptocurrency, most of the transactions, if not all of them, are usually what encrypted, right? To ensure that these data cannot just be randomly accessed by anybody. So encrypting data at rest and in transit ensures that even if your data is intercepted, it remains unreadable without the proper decryption keys, right? So you want to ensure that, say for instance, now if Spotify is sharing data with Netflix, right? They do not just send it openly that the average person can just get access to it. They usually encrypt this data to ensure that even if somebody, if there should be a data leak, the average person would not be able to just have access to those data. Somebody just dropped off. Then wait for a few minutes. All right. So the second one we have there is what access control. The second one we have here is what access control. So implement role-based access controls to restrict access to sensitive data and models, right? So you see things like access control, you see it in banks and in the military. So for instance, in the bank now, if you're grade, let's say we have grade 5 as the higher grade and what grade 1 as the entry level in a banking system now, banking officers, tellers, and so on and so forth. If you are a grade 1, what's it called, employee, right? There are certain places in the what banking hall, there are certain rooms you cannot access as a grade 1 employee, right? That is limited to just grade 4, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, what what's it called, employees, right? That's what we call access control. Another thing we see is in the military, right? There's certain informations that they share with the general platoon. There's certain information they share with just captains. There's certain information that they share with just majors. There's certain information that is shared with just the generals. And those are what forms of access controls. The same things can be implemented in what in what's it called now? In machine learning models, right? Just to ensure that only authorized personnel have the necessary permissions to handle critical data sets, right? Then we have data anonymization. Now what this basically means is what removing personally identifiable information. Let me see if I can get something from cargo, right? That we can see cargo data sets. Yep, cargo data sets. Let me see. Turn back customer. This one I'm looking for. Right. Okay. Understood it. All right. So we have to ensure that we remove personally identifiable information. So for instance, if you're using a customer's data, I want to believe that when people like when data is being shared across our socials, right? All these companies, say for instance, Meta now wants to access certain data from Netflix or from Spotify, right? Before those data are sold, there are usually some fields that have to be taken up. For instance, the user's credit card, probably user's name, full name, they can leave maybe the first name, the user's address, IP numbers, and all those things. Those things will be taken off because they can be used to personally identify who the person is, right? So that's what data anonymization does. It helps with what protecting the individual's privacy while maintaining data utility for training. Now, these are part of the things we're also going to be doing in the course of the boot camp, right? So we're going to be learning how to clean data. It's called data cleaning. So we're going to learn how to clean data and take out what the the unnecessary information, right? Then we also have secure data pipelines. We have adversarial training, and we have regular audits and monitoring. What regular audits and monitoring does, like I previously explained, is even after you launch your your AI technology, or you use your data set for training, you want to ensure that the data you're using is still useful and what is not hallucinating. So those are some of the strategies we have for securing machine learning models. So let's do a quick recap over from this stuff. All right, so we've looked at what we've looked at AI bias and what ethics is. We've looked at what the importance of security in machine learning. Right, we've looked at the risks and vulnerabilities that are associated in what machine learning systems, and then we've looked at the best practices, some of the best practices for securing machine learning models. Now, beyond that, here at Mindflux, in the course of the AI and machine learning bootcamp, right? In the course of the AI and machine learning course, right, we're going to be learning more about this. We're going to be going into the in-depth parts of this, where we get pretty hands-on, where we explore things like data sets. So let me just show this data set and show us one or two things. Okay. So where we get to, so now what we'll do is we'll be showing us how to get data, where to get data from, what kind of data to use. Those are some of the things we're going to be looking at. We get user data. We're going to work on model and cleaning, data training, and so on and so forth. You get to build industry class projects that you can use for your CV to apply for jobs and also to work on your portfolio. So currently, enrollment is already ongoing. Enrollment is ongoing, and I'm going to be sending the link. I'm going to be posting the link to the form, right? So we're gonna have some access to this stuff, and then make an enroll for the classes. Just give me a second. All right, so for those that, so here we have the link. So the link will also be embedded in the, what you call now, in the video recording that is going to be sent across. The link to our classes, the flyers, the payment modality. The beautiful thing is that now there's a partnership that we had with what we have with Churchill, Churchill expansions, right? That enables you to get a scholarship of sorts. So you do not have to pay the full fee. A particular percentage is going to be paid out of the payment for you, right? And this is in partnership with your Churchill. So what you could do is you could go on our socials, Mindflux Academy, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, right? Or you could send a message via mail, and then they will walk you through the modalities of how to apply for the scholarship and get it. So the bottom line is this: when coming in, you get the most out of every session. We have relevant materials, hands-on materials that would be used for you once you sign up. We have 24/7 support systems that would guide you through every part of the training. So thank you very much for joining this evening. So we did cover a couple of things. I do hope that with the information we've gotten here this evening, that when going forward, when making use of AI systems, we're going to be having these things at the back of our minds, right? We're going to be ensuring that the informations we share with AI will be things that would not serve as data breach, and amongst other things, to also help keep us safe. So thank you everybody for your time. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you when the course starts. Bye. Anything from end, Mr. Olumide?